With respect to this one in particular, pushing out that relationship, making it broader and deeper with the United Kingdom, an absolutely critical historical ally, and one that is even more important now given the uncertainties of relationships in North America. It is extremely important that Canada and the UK be tight and close, and that the prime ministers work together on their economic issues, because the world economy has been upended, and on the defense and security issues. Some of those things you can do by electronic means, or pull asides at other meetings.
What if the biggest geopolitical shift of this decade didn't happen in Washington, Beijing, or Moscow, but quietly behind closed doors between Ottawa and London? What if, while America was distracted by internal division and election drama, its closest neighbor was already redrawing the map of power, without asking permission, without making noise, and without looking back? Because that is exactly what just happened. In recent days, a face-to-face meeting between the Prime Ministers of Canada and the United Kingdom has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. On the surface, it looked routine. Two allies, a handshake, familiar language about cooperation, history, and shared values. But beneath that calm exterior was something far more serious, something that could fundamentally change North America's balance of power, and something that many in the United States are only now beginning to notice. Because this was not just another meeting, this was a signal. For decades, Canada's global position was simple and predictable, economically tied to the United States, militarily aligned through NATO, politically careful not to upset Washington. The relationship was so deeply embedded that few ever questioned it. America led, Canada followed. That was the unspoken rule. But that rule is breaking, and the cracks have been growing for years. Trade disputes, tariffs, sudden policy shifts, public insults. Behind the scenes, Canadian officials have been quietly reassessing a dangerous reality. Depending too heavily on one partner, especially one as politically unstable as today's United States, comes at a cost. And that reassessment accelerated dramatically during the Trump era. For Donald Trump, alliances were transactional. Loyalty had an expiration date. Agreements could be torn up overnight. Even Canada, long seen as America's safest ally, was not spared. Steel tariffs, trade threats, open hostility. The message was clear. Proximity no longer guaranteed protection. Ottawa listened, and Ottawa adapted. What we are witnessing now is the result of that adaptation. The meeting with the UK was not about ceremony, it was about urgency. Global markets are unstable. Supply chains are fractured. Defense assumptions that held for decades are collapsing. And in this new world, Canada is positioning itself not as America's junior partner, but as an independent power with options. The United Kingdom, facing its own post-Brexit reality, is the perfect counterpart. Cut loose from the European Union, London needs strong, reliable partners. Canada offers political stability, resources, and strategic geography. The UK offers military reach, intelligence depth, and global diplomatic networks. Together they form something quietly powerful, a partnership that doesn't revolve around Washington. That's the part that should make American policymakers uncomfortable. Because when Canadian and British leaders emphasize the importance of meeting eyeball to eyeball, they are saying something very specific. This is not symbolic alignment. This is operational coordination. Real decisions, real timelines, real instructions given directly to officials to deliver results before the end of the year. This is how serious alliances are built. And here's the uncomfortable truth for the United States. This is happening precisely because North American relationships are no longer reliable. Canadian officials are no longer willing to assume continuity in U.S. policy. Elections swing wildly. Foreign policy flips overnight. Allies are praised one day and punished the next. From Ottawa's perspective, This isn't leadership, it's risk. So Canada is hedging. And it's doing so in a way that fundamentally alters the old hierarchy. Defense cooperation is one pillar. Intelligence sharing is another. Economic alignment may be the most important of all. With global trade in turmoil, Canada and the UK are exploring ways to shield each other from shocks, bypassing US pressure points entirely. That includes energy, critical minerals, technology supply chains, and financial coordination. None of this is accidental, and none of it is being announced loudly. That silence is strategic, because the goal is not to provoke the United States. The goal is to prepare for a world where the United States can no longer be counted on in the same way. From an American perspective, this is the nightmare scenario. Not because Canada is becoming an enemy, but because it no longer needs to wait. For Trump, in particular, this development strikes at the core of his worldview. His foreign policy relied on leverage, pressure, and the assumption that allies had nowhere else to go. But Canada just demonstrated that it does. Quietly, methodically, with one of America's closest historical partners. And that changes everything. It means tariffs lose power. Threats lose credibility. Sudden policy swings no longer command automatic compliance. When Canada sits at the table with Britain as an equal strategic partner, Washington is no longer the only voice that matters. This is not about betrayal. It's about survival. Canada is preparing for a future where U.S. leadership is inconsistent, unpredictable, and inward-focused. The U.K. is doing the same. Together, they are building a parallel track, one that runs alongside America, not beneath it. And the most telling detail of all, this alliance is being built face-to-face. In an era of video calls and digital diplomacy, leaders don't travel unless something is at stake. They don't insist on being in the same room unless trust, urgency, and power are involved. The decision to meet physically is the clearest sign that this relationship has moved beyond symbolism. For American viewers, this moment should not be ignored. It signals a shift in how U.S. allies think about the future. It reveals the consequences of treating partnerships as disposable. And it raises a question Washington can no longer avoid. If Canada is preparing for a world beyond automatic alignment with the United States, who else is doing the same? This isn't the end of the U.S.-Canada relationship, but it is the end of the old assumptions. And for Donald Trump, or anyone who believes America can pressure allies without consequence, this is the worst nightmare becoming real. Because power doesn't disappear overnight, it erodes quietly, and sometimes it walks out of the room and starts building something new somewhere else.